Hello? 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 Natalie? Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? I can't hear you. Oh. Hello? Hello? Hi, Natalie. If you can hear me, I can't hear or see you at the moment. Ah. Hello? Hello? Hi, John.
Hello.
Hello, John. Hi, it's Caroline here.
All right.
Hi there.
Can you see me?
I can't. No, I can hear you. Can you see me?
I can.
You can.
I can, and I can see a little box at the top of the screen with my name on it, but with camera not working written on it, which means I must do something. I wonder.
Yeah, I've allowed your video at this end, so that should
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Dink. Select camera. Give me a moment.
Okay, that's okay. You're first. What? Another lady logged in, but she needs to switch to another computer because she hasn't got. Oh, here's someone else. Oh, she's back. Here we go. Hi, Natalie. Hello. Hello. No, I still can't see or hear her. Natalie? Hi, Roland. Hello? Can you hear me, Roland? Hello? Oh, Natalie? Oh. Hi, Alistair. Hello.
Hello?
Hi there, can you hear us?
Yes, this is Roland.
Hi, Roland. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Hi. I think there are 5 of us at the minute, and people are in varying degrees of turning their videos on and audio on.
Yes, yeah.
Hi, Alistair.
Hello, can you hear
Hi.
me?
I can. There you are. Yeah, I can. Yeah. Great. So I think there's about half of us are here so far. Just checking. Yeah, my volume's up. Natalie, can you hear us? Okay. Roland, I can hear you, but I can't see you at the minute.
No, I don't have any video. Sorry. It doesn't
Okay.
work.
Okay. But you can see us.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Natalie, can you hear us at all? I don't think she can. Oh, I can hear it still saying it can't disappear.
Oh.
Oh no, that's not Natalie, that's Roland. Hi. Okay, so it sounds like Natalie's not, she's going to be able to listen but not talk back to us. She's got some technical, so can everyone see the chat on the right hand side?
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got Roland. Great. So we've got a couple more minutes till we're due to start. So hopefully our other 5 people will join us soon.
Okay.
Has everyone been enjoying the sunshine?
Yes, very nice.
It's all gone cloudy all of a sudden.
Has it? Oh, it's still all right here at the minute because it could change.
I don't think there's any danger of rain, but it's just a bit,
No.
yeah. So do you control who gets put on the screen then?
Yeah, the person that's talking will then automatically go large. At the minute, obviously, yours has become the biggest. I think I can manually change that if I want to, but it should do that itself. And then I can mute you all. So once we start doing presentations, I can mute everyone apart from the presenter. Yeah.
I keep losing the video. I don't know if that's normal or.
Okay.
No, you're back now.
We're back.
Yeah. And it also says recording on the top left. Is that you or is that me?
Yeah, it's recording. Yeah. So the plan is to put it on our website afterwards for people to have a look at.
I wasn't sure if I'd clicked something.
No.
And it was filling up the hard drive with.
Yeah. So I've taken part in a few Zoom webinars, but this is the first time I've led one, so hopefully we won't have any technical issues. Yeah. John, you can still hear us?
Yes.
But are you having some problems with the video?
Yes. Close other apps. Oh no. No, I can't somehow make Zoom access the camera on this computer. I could forget the computer and sign in using my mobile phone. That might be. It's Windows 10. It never works for anything as far as I can see. I'll tell you what. I'll sign out, and I presume I can do Zooming on my mobile phone.
I wouldn't. Yeah, you can do. I haven't done it myself, but I know people who have.
Right. So I'll sign out. How can I sign out here? Leave meeting.
Yeah.
Leave meeting.
I'll come back in a minute.
Meeting.
Okay. Oh, I think Natalie's going to swap computers again.
How do you see the full message? Because I just see just a few words of that.
I think you should be able to scroll up within the chat.
Oh right. Once the little bubble is there, you can scroll through. Is that
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Not that I probably need to.
Okay, so Natalie's logged out again. Is coming back. Hopefully, we can get over all the technical things by about 10 past. Get going. Yeah, so I did a practice go with Hugh the other day, so he definitely knows how to use it. So he should be with us soon.
Yeah.
Do you know Hugh, Alistair?
I do, yes.
You do?
Yeah. We both, well, he leads the East Midlands Circle. We have, well, we used to have 2 meetings a year, but now we only have 1. So.
Yeah.
So the person who runs that.
Is that the East Midlands?
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
Children in the background.
Yeah, so my husband's just putting her to bed. So it's like that BBC thing where that man in, I think, was it Hong Kong? Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah. Oh, we've got Tanya. Hi, Tanya. Hello. Can you hear us? Oh, she's not. Hi, Tanya. We can see you, but we can't hear you at the minute.
Oh,
hello. Hi there.
Hello.
Hi. Can you hear and see us?
Yes, I didn't realise I'd be on.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Oh, Hello. Hi, Natalie. Great. So there are 5 of us at the minute. There were 6 of us. John's just switching to a different device. There's John. Hi, John. Hi, Natalie.
I don't think so.
Hi, John. We can see you now, John. Can you see us? Great. So we're just waiting on a couple more people, so we'll give them till about 10 past. Just seeing if Natalie can hear us now. Oh. Hi, John. Oh. So I'm just checking on who we're waiting for, Liz. Yeah, so we've got 4 people, one of whom is one of our speakers, so hopefully he'll hear in a minute. Sorry if you can hear my little girl in the background, she's just going to bed.
Mine are playing cards.
Okay, that's quieter.
It's not howling.
Hello? It is speaking. Hi, Hugh. Okay. Right. Okay, it's a different it's a different meeting, so it's a different connection. That's all right. I'm just seeing if I can get it up for you. Zoom. So it would be one that you received. I'm just trying to find it for you when you signed up. Yeah, sorry, I was just letting someone in. I'm just wondering if I can find that email and resend it to you. Hi, Daniel.
Hi there.
You can hear us?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just helping someone over the phone get on onto it.
Oh, okay, no problem.
And then hopefully I've just let your video.
Yeah.
Has to start video, so I think you might have to click something at your end and then your video will start. Yeah. Hugh, I've just emailed that to you, Hugh. Yes, you might have to quickly register. Daniel,
Yeah.
are you able to do video, or you're not sure?
Yeah. Hold on.
Okay, that's all
Try
right. We've got a few more minutes. We're not quite.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 Okay.
Caroline, I'm struggling to work out how to get the video to show.
Okay, we can hear you. And sorry, I'm just talking to Daniel. One moment. Daniel, can you hear us and see us?
I can hear and see you. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so that means you'll be able to join in audio, and you'll be able to see what people are putting on the screen.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, Hugh, you've just come through. Okay. Bye. Hi, Hugh. Hello. And there's Natalie again. Great. So that's I think all but one of us now. Great. I'm just gonna. We'll start in 1 minute. I'm just gonna check who is here from my list. Yeah. I don't know if Natalie's joined us twice. Oh no, we're fine. We're good. Great. So I think we're missing one person, so they might join us at some point. But I think we'll make a start. So everyone, thumbs up. Everyone can hear me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Great. So I can't quite see everyone at the same time, but I think we can all see a few. Yeah. So what should happen is as people talk, whoever's talking, the Zoom should pick that up and make them the larger person, if you like. Great. So for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Caroline. So I'm your host for the evening, and I'm just going to talk for a few minutes before we hear from our presenters. So I work for a small charity called March's Energy Agency, and for about 9 years now, we've been providing various services to community groups in Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire who are focused on climate change and sustainability issues. So I will just share my screen, and then we can test that works. Can everyone see my screen now and see an orange website?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So this is the website that we provide in the area, and we also provide newsletters which you can sign up to via the website. Okay. So I'll just pause that a moment. Great. And so this time last year, we surveyed everyone who receives our newsletter, and it became quite apparent that people wanted to know a lot more about community-led sustainable transport. That's what's led to this webinar. And it's been like one of the easiest events I've ever organised in some respects, in that I could straight away think of lots of like inspiring projects and people to ask to talk, and they were all very willing to talk. So it's I think there's a lot going on, which is great. But there's obviously always room for more. So I'm hoping this event will inspire people to start more projects. Yeah. So a couple of just practicalities. This is the first time I've led. I've taken part in Zoom quite a lot, but the first time I've led it. So I hope we don't have any technical things beyond what we've already had. So if you need to leave at any point, if you need the toilet or just grab a glass of water because it's so hot, please do just go and come back. That's fine. And we'll finish on time at 9 o'clock. Because I think any of us want to be using our heads after that. So in a minute, when we start the presenters, I am going to press the mute function so that most of you will be muted. Just the presenter will be talking, but that'll just be for the time they're talking, and then after that we'll have time where we can all chat. And the other thing is, I did say in the emails in advance, but we are recording this, so with the aim of being able to show it to other people afterwards. Okay, and yeah, and towards the end I'll ask if you're this is completely optional, but if you're happy to share your email with other people who attended, if you wanted to share ideas afterwards, but that's optional. Okay, great. And I'll just quickly show you the agenda for the evening as well, so you know where we're going. There we go. So so it's like 7:10 we're in these sort of introductions now. We've then got Alistair, Roland, John and Hugh, and we'll do it in that order. It's a bit of random order, but each talking about the projects they're involved in. There'll then be a chance to ask them some questions, and after that we'll finish with more of an open discussion. So if anyone's got any other projects they want to talk about, or if people want project ideas that they want to share or ask for help with, yeah, it's just a chance to have more of an open discussion. Okay, stop sharing. So is everyone happy with that so far? Is that all make sense?
Fine, yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
In that case, we're starting with Alistair. So Alistair, are you happy to share your screen if I stop
Yes.
sharing my screen?
Of course.
Yeah.
So, right, hang on. Can you now see something that says Chesterfield Cycle Campaign?
Yes.
Marvellous. Right, okay. So I'm going to talk about three things. Firstly, the Chesterfield Cycle Campaign. I've been secretary of the campaign since 2005, I think it is, 2005 or 2006. We are a campaign of around about, at the moment, about 260 members. We were slightly higher. It seems to have dropped off a bit recently. I'm not quite sure why, because there are certainly more cyclists in Chesterfield. But anyway, that doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to talk about a few things that the campaign are involved in and what we do, and then I'm going to talk about a social enterprise that I'm a director of called Inclusive Pedals. And then I'm going to talk about my own business, which is called Really Fun Wheels, that provides cycle training in the area, Chesterfield and North East Derbyshire. So Chesterfield Cycle Campaign then. This was going on before I became secretary, but we've carried this on and I think we've sort of enhanced that. So we have regular meetings with Derbyshire County Council, mainly the Highways Authority, but there is if anybody else in this webinar lives in Derbyshire, I don't know whether they do or not, but Derbyshire County Council run 4 times a year, they run a cycle forum, which we learn about all sorts of things that are going on, which is quite good, and we get a chance to feed back to officers about what we think. We're a 2-tier authority here, so Derbyshire County Council are the Highways Authority, but we have Chesterfield Borough Council, and we don't have a very good relationship with the Borough Council. They're not particularly cycle friendly, shall I say? But we just of late we seem to have got a little bit further along that road, and we're hoping to establish a forum to discuss cycling with officers from Chesterfield Borough Council and from the County Council. The air quality officer is going to be involved in that as well. Now, we are official consultees of Chesterfield Borough Council Planning Department, so we get copies of all the plans that come in, and we have someone who checks those regularly, passes the ones that he thinks need comment on to me, or Lisa, I don't know if there is Lisa Hopkins, she also looks at those as well. And we regularly comment on those planning applications, and if we feel that things aren't being done as we would like, we attend the planning meetings and we try to influence decisions. And we have had some success. We don't always get success, but we have had some. So just in a bit of context as to where Chesterfield is, this is the Derbyshire County Council cycling map. And so the thick green lines are off-road cycle routes. So they mainly follow the valleys in Chesterfield, and we're quite well connected to the north, but not particularly well connected to the south. But if you can see on the Chesterfield, it says Grassmore Country. I've been muted, it tells me.
You haven't, sorry, I've clicked something wrong to say, but I've undone it. I've undone it straight away,
Can
sorry.
you still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, right. Just to the south of Chesterfield, you can see, you might be able to see where it says Grassmore Country Park. Well, there's a partial link open now between there and the south, so that's helping quite a lot. And there's a growing network around. To the left-hand side of the map is a huge hill, of course, going out to the Peak District, which makes life a bit more difficult, but there we are. Now, in 2010, Derbyshire County Council conducted a cycle audit of Chesterfield, and they came up with a plan, like this underground map, of where all the links could be. And so if any new cycle infrastructure is put in place, it's based on that cycle audit. And that's the sort of local map that you get for all parts of Chesterfield, showing where routes could be. So the dotted lines are where new routes need putting in. And it was decided to colour code all the routes. That's sort of fallen by the wayside, and we're in the process of doing a new wayfinding system using the Dutch system, where they number intersections, and at each intersection you get a direction sign to the adjacent number. And it works fantastically well in Holland, and hopefully it might start to get rolled out in North East Derbyshire. Now, they decided to concentrate on the north-south link, first of all, and we've had over the last few years, we've had about £2 million worth of investment putting cycle infrastructure in, and the major part was just south of the railway station on an old branch line, and they replaced 2 bridges on the branch there and turned it into a cycle track, and that cost £1 million. That opened last year. That's one of the bridges going in at night. When that route was opened, we organised about 100 school children to come down and cycle down for the opening of the route. And there's the actual official opening. Now, further on, going down to the south, they've been doing quite a lot of work widening a shared path. And these are now the junctions across side roads where they've altered the curb line, so it makes it look as if you can cycle straight across. You still have to give a bit of care. You can't really just shoot straight across, but it's a lot better. And even further south, there's a path that was 3 metres wide, and the work is just about to start to widen it 5 metres wide, a shared walking and cycling path. So there's quite a lot of money going into infrastructure in the town. So, as I said, we've got about 250 members at the moment. We were up to 300 a couple of years ago. We send out a monthly email newsletter to, anybody. It goes to members mainly, but anybody can receive that. And we publish a quarterly printed newsletter. That is sent out to all members, and some are left in cycle shops, visitor information centres and libraries. So I know they all disappear fairly quickly. We have a monthly meeting where the business of the campaign is dealt with, and on average there's about 10 attendees, which I think is pretty good, really. We also publish the printed Chesterfield cycle map and ride leaflets, and we used to do that just out of our own money, but 2 years ago we got a grant, and so we were able to engage Sustrans to produce the map. That's one half of the map. So that's available free of charge. We had 5,000 copies printed, and we've still got about 2,000 left, I think. So that's quite good. And then we also publish a series of ride leaflets, just ideas for rides around the town. That's one called the 6 Parks Circular Route, and we're going to lead a ride around there in the summer. Now, we're also involved in all sorts of other things. Dr. Bike, we run a monthly Dr. Bike session in the Queen's Park, which runs from 9:30 till 1 o'clock on the first Saturday of the month. And there are 4 of us volunteer down there. And we're regularly getting in excess of 20 people coming down to get bikes repaired. In fact, we did the last month's one. We were extremely busy. They were getting on for 30 bikes, I think, by the time we finished. So we're just wondering quite where that's going, because every time we do one, we get more people. So I'm not quite sure how we're going to cope with that at the moment. But anyway, we do some rides. Particularly, we do a couple of cycling style rides during a year. And in fact, we had one last weekend. That got 27 people riding. The previous one had 40 people riding in it. So they're quite well done. And we also run information stalls, and that's just a few days ago at May Day, when Chesterfield has a big event. So that's a sort of quick run through of the campaign. The picture that you could see where the Dr. Bike was, that's actually that's a shipping container where the social enterprise that I'm involved with, called Inclusive Pedals, that's where they're based. And so Inclusive Pedals is a disability cycling project, and we've got about 15 trikes and quads down there crammed into that container. And groups and individuals can hire bikes, and we can use the Queen's Park, which has a cricket pitch with a nice tarmac track around it, which until the 60s was in fact a cycle racing track, so it's slightly banked, and we take groups on there quite regularly. So we've got, at the moment, we've got 2 regular groups that come every week. We've got about 5 or 6 other groups that come down on a sort of ad hoc basis, and we're running on the first Friday of the month, we're running some taster sessions. So we're there for 2 hours with all the bikes out. People can just come along. And in fact, this year, 2 ladies from Specsavers have donated a load of high-vis jackets, and they're also coming down to help. So it saves us having extra people. You know, we don't need so many people down there because they're there to help. The big problem with this is that we need to get the bikes from the shipping container, which is on the other side of the park, to the cricket pitch track. That's why we need so many people to help out. But with them there, it's really good. We sometimes do take the bikes to other events as well. And Brampton Brewery, who are our local brewery, they'll help out with the van, and we can take some of the bikes, the trikes, in the back of my car and also in their van. So that's at a recent event at Poolsbrook Country Park. So that's how that's working. It runs more or less on a shoestring, but it does run. And so we're gradually expanding. It all started with a grant from Derbyshire Sport to buy the bikes and the shipping container. And then there was a small amount of money to run sessions to get the thing going. But that money ran out a little while ago, and so we just rely on charging groups to come down, which makes a small profit, which sort of keeps the bikes going, really. Although once they need major replacement, we're going to. I don't know how we're going to do that. There'll have to be a grant to do that. Some of the bikes are very expensive. I don't know if any of you know these wheelchair carriers. They're almost £5,000. So, but it's a marvellous piece of equipment. But they are very expensive. So that's Inclusive Pedals, and moving on, I run a business called Wheelie Fun Wheels, which I started about 10 years ago, and we provide bikeability training for 3 local school sport partnerships, and all the different levels of training. We engage with about 5,000 children a year. We also provide adult cycle training, and that's funded by Derbyshire County Council. Will pay for anybody who lives in Derbyshire can have 8 hours free cycle training, and so we are one of the providers of that. We do events, and we do active travel promotion, which a little bit more of later. So there are 10 instructors that work as self-employed instructors for me. They all ride bikes. Some of them don't have a car, and they're often involved in other things. So one of our instructors is a lady who is a HSBC cycling breeze ride leader. Another one is a bike mechanic who runs a bike repair business, and another chap runs this company called Velotastic, who sells cycle clothing, things like that. And so we all sort of try and support each other. So the breeze rides call at Dr. Bike to give a bit of support to that. And Simon, who is the Brampton cycler, he's one of the mechanics that volunteers at Dr. Bike, as I do. He also gets work out of that as well. And also from going to schools, he gets work out of that. And Velotastic, he started running some cycling events in Derbyshire. And so he uses Simon from Brampton Cyclery to support those events. And also he can advertise them at schools that we're at. So although it's my business, we like to think of it as a bit of a co-op, and we all help each other out. So some of the things that we do balance bike training in schools, and we run 7 balance bike festivals for different school sport partnerships. One of them during the winter. That's our fleet of smaller bikes for Bikeability Level 1. Here we're doing some Bikeability Fix, which is a learning to repair a bike session. And the main bulk of it is on-road training of Bikeability Level 2 and 3. And there's a shot of somebody. Now, other things that we do then. The top left photo, we've been running some active travel workshops for the Bronze Young Ambassador scheme for 2 school sport partnerships. So they've been taking place at English Institute of Sport in Sheffield. So they've been quite big events. There have been several hundred children at each one. So the active travel ambassadors, we've been mapping all around each of their schools and giving them ideas of how they can promote active travel when they get back to school. And the workshops are to help them sort all that out. And we've been going into some schools to talk about what they can do. And in fact, one of the more active schools, we're actually hoping to get a crossing put in outside the school, which isn't there at the moment, and various things. We're running some lead rides, like a cycle bus into school in the morning as well. The top right is just a bit of a fun event. That was a lit bicycle parade that we did in the Queen's Park, and we got the mayor and the mayoress to pedal-powered generators to keep everything going. It was all pedal-powered, all the lights and everything. And then the bottom right is another pedal-powered party we ran. In fact, that was the first pedal-powered party we did in the town centre. And then we've been lucky enough for the last 2 or 3 years to have, firstly, the men's tour of Britain, and then twice the women's tour of Britain has been in Chesterfield. And we've run really big events for that. So we've taken nearly 200 children and parents into town for those events. You can see a few things. We've been organising things going on. And that's at the finish. So last year, every school that took part had a chance to ride along the finish straight just before the race finished. And they didn't do a very long ride, but this is the balance bike group from one school. And then that's one of the schools coming along the finish straight. So that's more or less just the last thing to say, that in last year I was nominated by Derbyshire County Council for a National Mode Shift Award for the individual contribution to sustainable travel, which I'm rather pleased to say that I won. So that was that. So there we are. Thank you.
Thanks, Alistair. That's great. If people have questions, let me just jot them down.
Just stop sharing.
Come to them at the end. Yeah. So what I'm going to do now, if that's great, thank you. Roland, if I just unmute you.
Yes, hello.
Hi, Roland. Hi there.
Hello,
so Roland
hello.
hasn't got video. I think you're just going to chat to us.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so I'll describe our project that we've been involved in and where we think it's going. For the past 4 years, Hayfield Sustainable Transport has run a pilot that makes 2 minibuses available on a car club basis. I'm assuming people know what a car club is. To local schools and community groups. And the key difference between a car and a minibus is that to use a minibus, a travel group of travellers needs to form to use the minibus, and it's the formation of these travel groups which we from the beginning have been suggesting is the building block of new transport provision, and I'll come to why that is so important in a moment. On the strength of this project, we've become involved as one of the partners in an EU project that aims to make to develop mobility as a service. Mobility as a service is the latest buzzword in development of transport, and it aims to bundle together all forms of transport so that it can be planned, paid for, and validated using a single account and mobile phone app. In a way that is similar in some ways to a travel card or Oyster card in London, but the step forward is that it would include all transport provision by all providers, including taxi, bike hire, on-demand transport, and the important part of that from our perspective, what we are doing within the project, is the on-demand part of it, because that's what our minibuses are. They're a type of on-demand transport. So the where was I? So yes, so this project, which is bundling together all the different types of transport. The on-demand part of it is, as I say, very important. The reason for that is that currently people's transport, people use their private cars to fill gaps in transport, and it's I think something like 78% of journeys are made by private car. So the ambitions of something like mobility as a service to affect a significant change has an immediate problem just based on that figure of 78%, because if it's going to have a significant impact, let's, for sake of argument, take 10% as a modest ambition to change the mode from private car to other forms of transport. If you have 78% of people making their journeys by car, that's 20%, 22% of other, and 10% of 78 is 7.8, which is 35% of 22. There isn't 35% spare capacity in the existing network, and there are lots of gaps which make it impossible for people to use anything other than their private car, which you conclude means that on-demand transport that can fill gaps and build capacity is a very important aspect of developing transport. So we are, as part of this project, there's 3 pilots in it. One's in Budapest, one's in Luxembourg, and the other is in Manchester. And we're part of the Manchester pilot of this Europe project. And we're located on the edge of the Manchester transport network. And our part of the pilot with respect to on-demand transport is to form the mechanisms that enable people to fill the gaps between residential areas and the termini of the transport network, bus and tram stops, between the residential areas and the Manchester network. So feeding more passengers into the transport network without them needing to use their private cars to get them to and from that network. And this is not something that hasn't been tried before. It's a regular, there's regular visits made to these sorts of problems. So part of our pilot is a train station feeder transport from where we are based in Hayfield to the nearest train station, which is 5 kilometres away in New Mills. If we were to initiate and put that transport on, experience has shown from 20 years of other failed on-demand transport projects, experience has shown that people wouldn't use it because they are currently driving to and from the station, and most of them would continue driving to and from the station, and it wouldn't be financially viable. Previous on-demand projects have tried to overcome that problem by subsidising the service with the ambition that it would become viable once a critical mass of users started using it. There's no experience where that critical mass has ever been reached. So that's not a solution. The problem, as I say, is that people are driving to and from the station. So any provision of train station feeder service needs to be done hand in hand with provision of a car club. The reason for that is that the people who you find it difficult to abandon or to sell their cars, even though they're using it mainly for transport to and from the train station, they find it difficult to sell those cars because they do have other uses for them, even if they are household second car. So in order to overcome that and address that problem, the idea is that car club will be set up in conjunction with the train station feeder transport. The problem with setting up a car club in an area such as this is that the conventional car club model doesn't work, because it is based on large numbers of people using it, using each car. About 45 people on average access each car club car, and so it doesn't. It has a problem of capacity, so that when somebody wants to use it, they can't be sure that it will be available. So it only works in areas where people don't rely very heavily on that car. They rely on a mixture of public transport, and so it works in areas where there is good provision of public transport. But because we're trying to address the gaps on the edge of the Manchester network, we are working in an area that doesn't have good public transport. So the people using their own private cars rely on them to quite a high extent. So the conventional car club model doesn't work. So we are having to invent a new car club model, and we're having to talk with the companies that lease vehicles in order to find a new ways of making those vehicles available to smaller groups, so that those groups of people can be identified, so that they have car use that doesn't clash, for example, and so that we can have, for example, 3 households accessing the same vehicle, and reducing the total number of cars that they own, and as a result being able to transfer to using the train station feeder transport. So those are the types of things that we're involved in. These are problems that have been, as I say before, tried lots of times, but the ambition or the hope is that the tech solutions that are possible now will help to enable people to come together to form those groups that make it possible to share on-demand transport that's then financially viable. So I think that's really all I have to say about that, and quite happy to talk about it and chat about it later. I can't hear you now. Do I click something else?
Sorry, that's my fault. Can everyone hear me now? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for that, Roland. Again, if people save any questions they have, and John is going to talk to us next. I think, John, you're on twice, aren't you?
Yes, I'm on twice. That's because
You're on 2 devices.
I have 2 devices, one of which will show my picture if I just click a few buttons here, and the other one will give me sound, but neither of them will do both things.
Okay.
Which is rather
Yeah.
strange, and I don't really understand it, but still.
Great.
So you should just get something now that'll show my picture with a bit of luck. Oh, look, there I am.
Yeah.
Very, very strange.
There you go.
Okay. I'm a member of Transition Belper. Now, Transition is an organisation which is perhaps a little different to some of the organisations I've just described. It's a broad-ranging organisation, a worldwide organisation. We started off at Totnes in Devon, and its aim is to promote community cohesion and a more long-term sustainable lifestyle. And the idea of Transition is that individual towns set up transition groups in order to promote those broad aims. And I'm about to say, what I've been listening to sounds pretty much like Transition sort of territory, but just called a different thing, if you like. Transition Belper is the organisation of which I'm part. And that's a group that does many different things, including notably running an environmental festival every year, which lasts for a couple of days over the weekend and attracts quite a few hundred people and some dozens of stalls. It's one of the big events in the place where I live. We also have groups that do community actions that are related to sustainable travel. For example, we have a group that provides a rather attractive garden at the railway station, the intention of which is to make it more interesting and more pleasant to travel by train. We have groups that arrange that attempt to do sort of promote sustainable activities such as renewable energy generation, where we established a one-stager company. It's not quite going, I think it is still going at the moment, but it's run into one or two sticky bits of territory. The aim of that is to produce hydropower from the Derwent. We have a group that looks at sustainable businesses, and the little group that I'm involved in, it's part of overall transition and deals with travel and transport. The aim of that group is to attempt to promote sustainable travel in Belper, and we do that in a variety of different ways. What we tend to do is have just one project that we're working at any time. So a project that we are just coming to, I think hopefully soon the end of, is we're trying to put an input into Belper's what do you call it? Belper's plan, the neighbourhood plan for Belper. Because obviously the neighbourhood plan, you may be aware of, is something that sets the pattern of a town's development for some years to come. And we felt it would be important, if Belper is going to be sustainable in the future, that into that town plan go things like cycleways and footpaths that will allow a sustainable way of life. So one of the things that we try to do is to get people to look a little more creatively at what the future might look like. Another thing that we have done, because of the fact we think that so many people, if you like, imagine that it will never be possible to sort out the world's problems and never be possible to reach the point where we have zero carbon transport systems. We've done some work to try to get across the idea that Belper could in fact operate a zero carbon transport system, and that it would be better than our current car-based transport system. Now, it's difficult to know how many people take that sort of thing on board, but we tried to produce cartoons that showed how in 30 or 40 years' time, people could get around and do exactly the things they currently do, but without the need to have a private car. And that's very much doing the sort of thing that Roland described with shared transport assets. But we took it a stage further and imagined how autonomous vehicles might play into that, so that those electric vehicles could not only take people from A to B, could not only share the ride with people, but could also take themselves away and recharge themselves on renewable energy when they'd finished their day's work or when their batteries were becoming exhausted. So what we've attempted to do with that is show that we're not just, if you like, beating our heads on a brick wall here and that the car lobby will always win, but trying to demonstrate there is a better way of doing things that will be quicker and more convenient and a great deal more environmentally friendly than what we currently do. And that, if you like, is to try to get people to think more excitingly and to get their heads up. We have encountered one or two projects that have been a little problematic. One was we got into a bit of an internal dispute on whether we should or shouldn't be promoting cycling, going back to Alistair's talk. We looked into, there was something of an internal dispute in the group over whether it was ethically correct to promote cycling in our area because the roads are so terrible and unsafe for cycling, that we felt it was leading people, that some of us felt that it was leading people to do something that really wasn't in their interests at all. And strangely enough, that arose, again, reading back to Alistair stuff, it arose when the tour of Britain, I think, came through. And we were asked to use that as an opportunity to promote cycling. And it as I say, started a dispute about whether we should or shouldn't be doing that thing. Our little group, let me think. I mean, Transition is quite a large organisation, but the Travel and Transport Group is a relatively small one and nothing like the achievements that, particularly that Alistair described. Absolutely not in that league at all. But what we do attempt to do is to keep having a project going at any one time. Another one I can mention is we've taken a lot of pollution measurements, or a number of pollution measurements around Belper. We try to understand the science of that and try to use that information to get home to people that it's better for them to walk than to use their cars. So we have this string of projects that's going sort of successively, one after the other. We feel we can probably only concentrate on one at any one time. We do from time to time have crises of conscience over whether we're doing enough, but we like to think that even though the individual actions that we undertake may not in themselves change the world, we are trying to do our bit. And when we meet, I think it's good for us to meet others of like mind and encourage ourselves to continue to do little things that we are doing, in the hope that eventually, if enough people do that, we'll actually be able to make a difference in the world. So that's what since I'm using both my devices and my notes were written in one of the devices, I haven't been able to go through my notes in reading that, but I hope that's given you an idea of what it is we do. Is that okay? It's all gone very quiet.
Okay. I can't hear you, Caroline.
I can hear Caroline. I can hear you now.
I'm sorry, I've done that again.
Now, yes.
Hello, hi. I'm Thank you very much, John.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Great. And our final speaker is Hugh. So Hugh should be able to talk now. Is that
right? I've got a PowerPoint presentation. Shall I refer to that? So
yeah. If you're able to click on share screen.
Share screen, and then right. Okay. Let's see where it's got to. Oops. Right. Okay. Can you see it now?
No, not yet. Oh, hang on. I may have pinned.
I've got it in front of me now.
Sure. In video. Great. Are you able to click on share it again?
I'll go back. Wait a minute. Let's just see. Okay. Back to desktop. Where was I before? Share screen. Right. Click on share screen. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, that's worked.
Okay. Let me go back to. Right. Now I get up the.
Can everyone see that?
Right. Yeah. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, just
fine. Okay. Right. Pedals is a Nottingham cycling campaign. We're the campaign group for the Greater Nottingham area. We've been going since 1979 now, so we'll be celebrating our 40th birthday next year. And we do represent cyclists in the whole Greater Nottingham area, not just Nottingham City, but surrounding districts in Roxton and Gedling and Rushcliffe. Not the whole of Nottinghamshire, I should add. That's far too much for us to have on our plate. Our membership is rather less than that of Chesterfield. Alistair talked about earlier. I think it's about 200, 250. And again, it's declined in recent years. And we tend to get anything between 8 and 16, sometimes up to 20 at our monthly meetings. We do concentrate on cycling as opposed to other means of transport. And the idea is to promote cycling as a means of daily transport, as well as for leisure, particularly for health and environmental reasons. So most of our work is campaigning for safer provision for cyclists in terms both of specific cycle facilities and more awareness of cyclist needs in all major traffic management, transport, planning, regeneration projects. That's the aim anyway. We focus on the Greater Nottingham area. So Nottingham City is what we have most to do with, but we also have to do with Nottinghamshire County Council, the other highway authority, and to some extent also the district councils, which are of course the planning authorities like Gedling, Rushcliffe and Broxtowe. And sometimes it's quite hard to get coordination between them, even though logically on the ground it doesn't make sense to have different transport policies in different parts of the area. Certainly we found with Nottinghamshire County Council commitment to cycling has fluctuated over the years. On the whole, it's been more definitely consistent in the case of Nottingham City. We weren't the first campaign group in the country. There were quite a few others that had started by the time we got going, including London, Bristol and Edinburgh, and I think there are about 50 odd nationally now. We started with a group of people already involved in related organisations like CTC, Cyclist Touring Club, Friends of the Earth Campaign for Better Transport, or Transport 2000 as it was. And basically we agreed that it was important. Sorry, I just have to put the phone now. Right, sorry about that. Yeah, the idea is that it was important to have a local group focusing on cycling as a means of daily open transport, not just for leisure recreation, which is what traditionally CTC, Cyclist Touring Club, done. Sorry, I have to try that again. Hello? She's out, sorry, till later, yeah. Sorry, bye. Right, okay, Kerry, sorry about that interruption. Right, let's get on. What have we done? I've tried to model a presentation on the questions you set, Caroline, so as to give some sort of structure to it. Yeah. What have we done over the years? We've certainly tried to influence many decisions on cycle infrastructure with varying degrees of success. We've been regularly consulted by city and county councils, Highways England in the case of trunk roads, and some of the local borough district councils with respect to planning applications. Of course, it's difficult to do that, and a lot of your time tends to be spent on reacting to consultations by other people rather than initiating things yourselves. One of our major successes was about 8 years ago now, when a very popular pedestrian cycle bridge over the Trent and Wilford Suspension Bridge was closed suddenly by Severn Trent Water, its owners, because they said it needed major repair. And they had no idea how popular it was for walkers, cyclists and runners, as well as being a major local community facility. So we led the campaign with other organisations to get that reopened. We also started many years ago now the Great Nottinghamshire Bike Ride, which is our mass cycle ride that takes place every June. And that we handed over to the County Council to run for some years, and it's now run by an outfit called Perfect Motion with Nottingham City Council. And has 5,000 odd people taking part each year with a variety of about 4 or 5 different routes, different lengths. We also started a program of guided cycle rides, which we ran with the County Council for many years, and it's now run by Ridewise and other organisations. What challenges have we faced? It's always been a problem, as with other voluntary organisations, getting enough active person power, all sorts of things, working on attending meetings, running stalls, and I agree with Alistair, having stalls at events is very important to get publicity and get new members. Some people are put off by the idea that you have to spend so much time reacting to all sorts of consultations rather than being proactive, which is one of the drawbacks of being a group like us, I guess. We do work with other organisations a lot, particularly Ridewise. I was amazed to hear from Alistair the amount of work they do in Chesterfield, all within basically one organisation in terms of cycle training as well as campaigning for better infrastructure. Here we have a separate organisation that's been around for about 15 years, Ridewise, jointly funded by the Health Authority and the City and County Councils, which concentrates on training cyclists, adults and children, individually in groups. We also work with Sustrans, who have an office for the East Midlands based in Nottingham, and we work with CTC, as they were now Cycling UK, both the local group and to some extent nationally. They've been called Cycling UK for the last couple of years, and they've tended to shift their focus over the years from leisure touring cycling to being the main organisation promoting cycling on a daily basis. We've worked with lots of other organisations. I mentioned already our campaign to get the suspension bridge reopened 10 years ago. We worked with 4 or 5 different groups to get that reopened, because we knew that if we just campaigned for it as a cycle facility, we'd have much more limited support, and that worked very well. We got it reopened within about a year and a half. In terms of more ambitious things now, one of the big projects we're working on is working with 4 other local organisations for a new foot cycle bridge over the Trent on the east side of Nottingham, linking to two major country parks, recreation areas like Holme Pier, Pontycollic Park, as well as many housing areas. And we've also got on board one of the local developers, whose chief exec is a very keen cyclist, and other groups like the Local Access Forum and various residents groups and Nottingham Civic Society. We've had to adjust the site for that recently, but these things we know take a long time, can easily take 10 years, but that's what we're working on. I think we're linked for walkers and cyclists to leisure attractions and to major new housing areas. Also, in terms of the wider East Midlands, the thing we're embarking on now is, of course, like other groups, we've got part of the HS2 railway coming through this area the next 2 years on its way from Birmingham to Leeds. That's going to include a new bridge across the Trent, about 7 miles west of Nottingham, between Thrumpton and Long Eaton, actually from Derbyshire on the south bank, Nottinghamshire on the Derbyshire on the north bank, Nottinghamshire on the south bank. And we're trying to work with other groups to get a shared path for cyclists and pedestrians as part of that bridge, which would link to many other routes, footpaths, trails, Sustrans routes, etc., on both sides. And indeed, it's not far from Leicestershire, so there'll be wider impact in the East Midlands. That's not going to be built for 15 years, but you have to start building up support for these things now. Other things we've done, we've got funding for various ad hoc projects over the years. In our early years, we spent a lot of effort producing the Pedalbusher's Guide to Nottingham, sort of showing, there weren't many cycle routes in those days, but showing the quieter back streets cyclists could use and popular countryside rides and guides to local bike shops. We did 3 editions of that were very popular, very lucrative financially, and filled a gap until such time as the local council started producing their own leisure maps, which to some extent has formed the market now, and that frankly the maps they do are now much better than the ones that we attempted those years ago. We also did 2 editions of a thing called City County Forests, looking at leisure rides, and that was actually done with local CTC, looking at leisure rides in Nottingham as a whole, not just Greater Nottingham that we normally focus on. Advice to other groups about setting up a project like this: things take a long time, so be prepared for the long haul. I think a lot of people are drawn into cycle campaigning. They think they can come along to a meeting and they can rant about how awful that layout is or that road is, and hey presto, you know, exercise pressure and it'll be sorted soon. Even when there's more money around, and of course there often isn't much money these days, it can take a very long time to get things done, building up support and chipping away, even for small scale things. So you have to be prepared for that and be realistic, and you have to think who you can work with on particular campaigns, as well as general promotion of active travel, on which of course there's much more interest these days, you know, linking into new agendas like air pollution or climate change, as well as promoting cycling and walking per se. And these are all levers you can tap. Working with other groups is very important, because cyclists on their own don't count for very much. I think that's just about it. But just a brief run through, but I'm happy when there's time to answer any more questions and join in the general discussion.
Great. Thank you very much.
I'll stop share now and go back to the main screen. Okay, right.
Right, there we go. Thank you. So I've just unmuted everyone. So if people have questions, we've got about 20 minutes now for people to ask any questions of the people who've just spoken.
I was interested in the presentation about Belper Transition Group. I know Transition Group do attempt a lot of things, but given that you're trying to do, you know, a lot of stuff on sustainable travel as well as other activities, isn't it difficult just sort of focusing on one project and then moving on to another? I mean, we find, as I was saying just now, that you have to be prepared to long haul and things take a long time to achieve, and unless you sort of concentrate for a long time, and if you drop them, then don't give them a sustained effort, then it can be harder to get those things eventually sorted. So I'm interested in general discussion about that, what other people find from their campaigns about whether you can achieve things in the shorter term, or whether often you are dealing with longer term campaigns to bring about real change, or even to get specific new facilities and specific changes like that.
I think maybe I could say at the start that Belper Transition is a different sort of organisation. It's not really a campaigning organisation. It's an organisation that seeks to bring the community together and bring about sort of personal change in attitudes and lifestyle. So as well as other parts of transition, there's a couple of groups called inner transition, which just meet and, if you like, contemplate how they might improve their own lives. So it's not really quite the same thing as a campaigning organisation, and in fact it's reluctant to campaign because it tends to put it into the political arena. What we do though is we try and support groups that are doing good things. So we do try to support things like the Derwent Valley Cycleway project, which is the equivalent of some of the projects that you've been discussing. But we're a different sort of organisation, I would say.
Yeah, just to say there, John, I'm on that group, the Derwent Valley Cycleway group, and I found it interesting what you said about not wanting to encourage cycling because it's dangerous, and obviously that is helpful to us because that gives weight to our argument about why we need a cycleway, because it is too dangerous to go along the A6. And we've had some people say to us, "Oh, you know, I'd love to be able to cycle, but I just can't because I'm too scared to go on the roads." So, you know, if we can use your evidence of that to support our cycleway, that obviously it's very useful. So I think it's just a matter of coordinating, isn't it, all these messages and
Yes.
And helping each other that way, even if you can't, you seem to be a campaigner.
Yes, that's right.
Tanya, what is it that you're involved in? The Derwent Valley Cycle? Sorry, I missed the name of it.
It's Derwent Valley Cycleway, which is what is proposed is an off-road cycle route between Derby and, well, at the moment we're just suggesting Matlock Bath, but eventually to go up to Cromford, and then up eventually even to Chatsworth, and fill that gap in between South and North Derbyshire. I know the gentleman was talking about the gap round Chesterfield.
Yeah.
You know, obviously there's a lot in Chesterfield and a lot going. There's nothing really going west, is there? Well, we've got the problem where there's all the routes to the north and the routes to the south, but there's nothing that would encourage people to cycle between them. So we're trying to argue it on that basis. Yeah. And then also, picking up on your points about using any argument possible, really, to promote what could be a one-issue campaign. We're looking at pollution levels in Derby, which City Council are very worried about, and using the cycleway as an argument to reduce that. We're also looking at commuting and the health of commuters. And then recently we've been trying to look at families and trying to get how we get families on the road and therefore get children to be cycling into their adulthood. Because at the moment, as I say, most families would not take their children anywhere near the A6, and other than going to Carsington or somewhere like that for an off-road cycle, or Tissington. But for that, there isn't anything in this area that you can do. And for those sort of journeys, obviously you need to get in a car and go there to cycle, which seems a bit silly. So what we're trying to do is sort of provide a route where all the linked residential areas around here, from Derby up all the way to Cromford, can access a safe and sort of easy to reach route.
I think the Derwent Valley Cycleway campaign is a very exciting project. I've heard quite a lot about it, and it's very good to have that kind of vision, especially where it links to other routes, the other routes you've got in the Peak District and so on. And I'm sure when it is implemented, it'll have a lot of. So I've been asked to click start my video. Oh, that is.
Yeah, we've lost you for some reason.
Yeah, okay. I'm sure it'll be a very good way of stimulating interest in cycling locally, and that will perhaps bring about a new outlook, a new determination to overcome the pleasant, very intimidating conditions on roads. If cycling is so popular, it has all these benefits. Why should it just be left to off-road cycleways? Why not make the ordinary roads and streets safer? If you've got the vision to start with of a good off-road cycleway, you can then use that as a springboard for promoting cycling more generally and more cycle-friendly roads and lower speed limits and other things like that.
Well, one of the things we might have to do is accept that we're not going to get it all off-road to start with. So we might have little off-road parts of the route sections, and then link into routes that are less dangerous to go around on the road to link up with the next off-road section. So I think we will definitely be looking at on-road safety as well. But it does mean that it's a much harder project because it's all off-road. You know, it'd be a lot easier to look at on-road routes, but it's a big mountain to climb. But one of the things they're doing is obviously trying to tie it in with the Derwent Valley World Heritage Site, because clearly if there was an off-road route going exactly along the site, it would really bolster the World Heritage Site status. So that's one angle we're looking at. I mean, we're looking at any angle we can really to sort of prove that it's necessary, but
I think it's very important to have that kind of long-term vision, even if they're in achieving a good quality route throughout its length to start with. As you say, you may have to accept substandard bits to start with and then work on those later. When you've done the easier bits, then move on to the harder bits. And making all things joined up is very important. And there is some encouragement now. I know what the government's talking about as local cycling and walking infrastructure plans, and there's actually a big consultation meeting for Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire taking place next week at the Derby Velodrome, and there's the 4 local authorities involved. The 2 city councils and county councils have got money to employ Sustran, so the firm of consultants in Birmingham who've done a lot on active travel, Phil Jones and Associates, to help people develop these networks that they want to see developed in the next 30 years, along with short-term priorities for the next few years. But you need to have that vision of the network you eventually want to see, while realising you can't achieve that all. You've got to do it step by step.
And I think it could be a good marketing ploy as well, if you get a little section going and then people think, oh, that works really well, and we love taking our kids to that part, but we want to go further, we want to go to the next part. So well, that's what we're hoping anyway.
Yeah, you need to build on little steps.
Right. Derby, Darley Abbey, and then move up.
Yeah.
The section from Matlock North has just opened. I don't know if you're aware of that. So you can now cycle from Matlock to Rowsley.
Yes, yeah, that's right, along the canal. Yeah.
Negotiations are going for the bit that's missing between Rowsley and Bakewell as well. So
yes, yeah. I mean, obviously it would all link in with all of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wonder if I could make a comment on the level of traffic on the road, which seems to be a significant problem with respect to putting people off cycling. And it's my view or experience is that transport is planned without knowing who's going where or when. And this is an absolutely fundamental problem in the provision and development of public transport, because transport is generally provided top-down by businesses and organisations who, as I say, don't know who's going where and when. And we are trying to change the approach by having a bottom-up approach of developing new transport provision by people who do know where and when they're going. And I think that this is where some of the advantages can be realised. If, for example, a hospital, for example, will know the journeys that everybody's going to have to make to the hospital on a particular day. A business park will know the journeys that people make, that a football match, etc. Endless sources of data, which are not exploited, and not the value in that data isn't used, because the existing transport providers are not in a position to make use of it, because they have a very conventional, non-responsive mode of transport. But I think there's great optimism to be seen from the impact of technology. If you look at the impact of technology on the retail side of the economy, and the effect it's had, maybe in some ways negative effect it's had on the high street, shows that people are able to use the internet to force the retail industry to be more responsive to their needs than the high street has traditionally been able to be. And so I think the same kind of revolution has been seen in retail could be achieved in transport. And that as I think somebody mentioned earlier, that coordination of the different aspects of this is the sort of thing that is very important.
Do you know how that bottom-up analysis is proposed? How will they get the data on that?
So you initially need some kind of responsive or on-demand transport that can make use of that data. So the trial that we're about to engage in is to do with train station feeder transport. So we, for example, need to go to Northern Rail and say, can you provide data on all the season ticket holders who use New Mills station to get to Manchester? If they don't provide it to us, then we'll have to go and stand on the train station and ask everybody. But that will be a demonstration of the potential for using that kind of data. So at another time, maybe they will be able to coordinate with us and provide the data to make that possible. We already provide transport for people going to all the Man United home games. We want Man United to share data with us on all their season ticket holders, so that we know that we're not missing anybody out of that journey just because they aren't personally networked in with the other supporters in that area. As I said before, the transport we're proposing for train station feeder transport has to be coordinated with car club development for the area. So we need data that shows the journeys that people are making using their cars, so we can identify people whose car use doesn't clash. So that requires data to demonstrate what journeys their cars are being used to make, so that we can combine them or help them to be combined themselves into small groups of 3 or 4 who are able to share the use of a car without fear of it clashing with the others, because they've got a body of data that shows that it's very unusual for their use to clash with one another. That kind of data use.
Yeah.
You know that if you look on the internet on maps to show the traffic situation, that all comes from Bluetooth receivers alongside main roads. I happened to be talking to one of the highways engineers about this a couple of weeks ago, so I didn't know how all this worked. But apparently in Chesterfield, on the A61, as it goes through Chesterfield, there are about 10 Bluetooth receivers. And so anybody with their phone on that's got Bluetooth switched on, although it doesn't identify them, it only identifies their phone. That's how they decide the speed of the traffic. So although you couldn't identify specific people, you could find out a lot of data about where cars are going from and to, by which receivers they're going underneath, from all that, if the companies would be prepared to share it, but I suspect they probably won't. Interestingly, we've got a cycle route that runs alongside the A61, and apparently as a cyclist, you will trigger the Bluetooth receiver. So if there were a huge number of cyclists going along there, it would make the average speed on that road go right down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
It'll be interesting to see how the
example
new data protection laws affect
Yes.
being able to get hold of all that information. Yeah.
Can I ask, does everybody else work with individuals, or do you work with other businesses or organisations? What's your main sort of priorities, and what are the reasons? Sort of, what's your sort of goal? That's right.
So for ourselves, we provide transport directly to travellers, to groups of travellers who are either from schools or local community groups. We do have to deal with organisations that regulate us and deal with organisations that we want to work with in the future, who will be able to. So tomorrow I'm talking with the Trade Association for Vehicle Leasing and Renting. So we want them to be involved, so that our ambition is not to be able to provide transport to everybody. We can't do that, but we can develop the mechanisms that help the leasing organisations lease vehicles on a basis that can be done on a bottom-up basis. So yeah, I think you need to do both.
Is that for their daily commutes, did you say, for like work and things, rather than leisure pursuits?
No, this was for both. So they had the two angles. One was a train station feeder shuttle, or it could, in another circumstance, be a work commuter feeder shuttle to a business park, or a number of different examples. In our case, our first step is a train station feeder. But then on the coupled with that, as I was saying, was the car club, which would be used for those other journeys that the car that it's replaced were being used for, which would be social journeys as well.
Yeah.
Natalie, what's your work or
Where I'm from.
what you're doing? Yeah.
Okay, so I'm from Wheels to Work Derbyshire. I don't know if anyone's familiar with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
We provide anyone who can't get to work, training or education a form of transport, either through mopeds or bicycles. So our focus is very much on the individual rather than on working with organisations. But it's not to say that we won't work with organisations to help improve their employability or whatever. So generally we did mainly get referrals from places like the job centres when people are coming off sort of job seeker support, things like that. They're moving into a place of work, training, education, and they can't get to where they need to be. You know, they can't, say they live at Ripley, Belper, they need to get Chesterfield, Worksop, anywhere. Our project just covers Derbyshire at the moment, including Derby City. So even if somebody's in Derby City and needs to get to Swadlincote, vice versa, it's fine going into Chesterfield or into Derby City, but if you need to go anywhere in between, it's impossible. It's not impossible necessarily, it's very difficult. So we provide a sustainable option of transport. So yeah, I can't remember what I was going to say now. Yeah, we just, we do, that was what I was going to say. We work with Sustrans in Derby City as well. They're a recent sort of joint project. They've recently, it used to be LSTF funding that Derby City had, which was Sustrans. And now they've got the Access funding, which operates, I believe their Access funding comes from Nottingham City, actually. And so we work with Bike Back Derby. I don't know if anyone's familiar with
Bike Back Derby. I've heard of them, yeah.
Yeah,
we
work very closely with them, really closely. We get, we send a lot of people down to them to get bicycles because they offer reconditioned bikes. So we can get, because we will, if somebody comes to us and says they've got a job, they can't get there, can they have a bike? We will give them a voucher. And obviously, the likes of Halfords or wherever don't accept a piece of paper that says Wheels to Work on it. So they go to Bike Back Derby, they buy a bike from them, which has been reconditioned. So it completes the cycle and then they go off to wherever it is they need to be.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I saw a bike in a skip today.
Oh.
And I nearly went and got it and thought, I couldn't remember the name of the organisation that does that, so I'll go and see if I can retrieve it for you.
Well, you can drop it in at the train station in Derby anytime. They're open 24 hours and they take donations.
Okay.
Yeah, there is quite a problem with those now. But yeah, no, we're looking actually to expand our project over to Nottinghamshire. Wheels to Work at the moment is for employability reasons. But because of funding situations, we're looking to have an earlier intervention in people's circumstances. So rather than waiting until they're at the point of being ready for employment, we're looking to engage earlier on. So anyone that might be suffering from mental illnesses or isolation in any form. So if somebody is out of work because, say for example, someone's out of work because they've got bad knees, all they need to do is reach a local leisure centre a couple of times a week. We will offer them a bicycle to get there. But at the moment, unless they've got work training or education, we can't help them. So we're looking at expanding our eligibility, getting more funding to expand our eligibility to help people earlier on to sort of increase the social mobility of the nation. But as well as just doing Derbyshire, we want to move into Nottinghamshire because there was a Nottinghamshire Wheels to Work and their funding came to an end and they've stopped. But we keep getting calls from Nottinghamshire. But because we're county council funded, we're not allowed to cross the border. So,
yeah. Do you have a potential source of funding for Nottinghamshire then?
The big lottery. We're currently big lottery funded in Derbyshire, and that's coming to its end soon. So we're looking at putting in a continuation covering both Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire. But because obviously they've got such a big programme with building better opportunities, which is very employability focused, we're looking at taking it from a mental well-being side of things. So it's not a case of, yes, if somebody's needing to get into work, we can also help them. But, you know, if it's just going to benefit their condition.
Great.
Natalie, I think we met at Lansley Green in Chesterfield. Did you get any contact in Chesterfield? Because I know when we spoke then, you were trying to find assorted bikes in Chesterfield.
Briefly, you know Monkey Park?
I do, yes.
Yeah, but whenever we needed a bike, they didn't have anything.
Right.
So I don't know whether they've not really operated. A question I actually had for you, have you approached Chesterfield College at all? Because last time I met with them, they wanted to set up a cycling hub. But obviously because the only cycling connections we really have is at Sustrans in Derby City, it's quite...
Yeah. We were talking to them about having a bike a bike sharing scheme for their various sites, but it obviously needed quite a lot of money, and they didn't have that amount of money. But I do work with Will. Do you know a chap called Will down at the college? He's one of the sports people and active travel people. I do work with him, and in fact, some of his SEN students are using our inclusive pedals trikes at the moment. So.
No. To be fair, working with Chesterfield College has proved pretty difficult. I've struggled to get in touch with them, but we are planning to attend some of their open events coming up, thankfully.
Okay. Well, I could certainly send you his email address, because he's quite a good chap, actually. So
I have spoken to a couple of people. It just never leads to much. But one of them, he's actually an avid cyclist.
Okay.
That's why I thought of him.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds like you two need to talk as well after. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see Daniel. Daniel, you joined us by video. Hello. Hi. Great. Hi there. Did you have anything you wanted to?
Yeah, so I suppose I should just perhaps explain a little bit about my background. So I'm senior infrastructure campaigner at the Campaign to Protect Rural England, and I work at the head office in London. And we're at the moment scoping out what sort of sustainable transport campaigning work we want to do going forward. So this sort of discussion has been really interesting, just in terms of finding out what's going on in different parts of the country and how it all comes together. So this is sort of all inspiration for our work, really.
Great. Okay. How did you hear about us if you're London based, just out of interest?
I think I got an email. I think I had an email. Yeah.
Okay. Great.
It does work then, Caroline.
It does work. Yeah, people read my emails. Great. I've got a question. Alistair, you talked about being an official consultee of Chesterfield Borough Council, and I know Hugh, you respond to lots of consultations, and you often get asked rather than having to go to them. So I was just wondering, how do you get to be an official consultee?
I don't know.
You're not sure? You just are?
We just always have been. In fact, because I'm part of Transition Chesterfield as well, and they attempted to become official consultees, but I think the response from the council was that there is no such thing as an official consultee. I think it's just really, it's certainly in Chesterfield, it seems to have just grown up that you consult the cycle campaign like you would Severn Trent Water and National Coal Board and things like that. I don't actually know. Maybe Hugh knows.
I think you had to raise your profile in the first place to get known. That's how we started being consulted. And then once you've got a track record responding to certain things, then you're much more likely to be consulted automatically in future. But it is important, in addition to responding to things like planning applications or traffic management scheme proposals, that you also make use of forums that exist. And in Nottingham for about 10 years now, we've had a thing called the Greater Nottingham Cycling Development Group, which consists of representatives of pedals, the sitting county councils, Highways England, Public Health in theory, the police in theory, although they're not always represented, Ridewise, our local cyclist training provider. And we meet every 2 months, and that's intended to promote a strategic approach to new cycling initiatives. most of his work tends to be concerned with infrastructure, but it brings in other things as well. And that's quite useful. So it's not supposed to be concerned with every bit of white paint or white line or every pothole, but sort of the broad case for things or the strategic case for things. And that's probably our most useful regular dialogue with the city and county council, a bit less with the county recently, because as I mentioned earlier, the commitment to cycling has become much weaker in recent years, but certainly with the city. And sometimes, again, it's all part of this process of building up a long-term case to get things done. If you're dealing with Highways England over provision for cyclists on trunk roads, it takes ages and ages to get even simple ideas across, and then the people you've briefed about certain ideas you've got then moved on to another job, and you have to start again with fresh people. That's very frustrating, but at least you can use these mechanisms, forms that exist, where there's some representation from these different bodies. Yeah. And Sustrans, of course, are represented on that as well, and that's another useful link.
Great. Okay. Great. Has anyone else got any more questions at all?
I got one question about the minibus scheme, the shared minibus. Who would drive that minibus? How does that? I mean, I'm a member of a car share group. That's fairly obvious how that works. But if you've got a
well, it's the same. It's the same. The users drive it. Officially, for VAT reasons and some other reasons to do with permits, the drivers are driving for us, because if you provide transport with a driver for vehicles over 10 seats, then you can be 0 rated for VAT. But you can drive one of these vehicles, 17-seat minibus. If it's fully accessible with a passenger lift, then your normal 3.5 tons is extended to 4.25 tons, and you can drive it on a normal B1 car driving license. So the drivers are usually from the groups that use the vehicle. So the Man United supporters, the driver is themselves going to the match. The school that uses it, or the 5 different schools that use the vehicles, the drivers are teaching assistants and parent helpers. So in each circumstance, they always have their own drivers, and that's we have over 100 drivers. We provide them with the minibus driver awareness scheme, assessment and training. So yeah, that's
okay.
How many groups make use of the minibus, Roland, or how many organisations?
Well, we have 30 regular groups, but over a 12-month period, more than 50 different groups will use it. But some of those will only use it on one occasion, but sometimes they will use it regularly on that one occasion every year for that particular event. Okay,
like an annual Girl Guide camping trip or something.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. And as I was saying before, our interest is the way groups form, and a lot of groups are not of enormous interest because they are already formed, because they are already guides or they are already schools. So that's not a lot of interest. But the groups that are of interest are where the Man United football supporters or a local cinema group come together and form in order to go to the activity. And so we're very interested in linking transport much more closely with the activities that make that transport necessary, which is when you start to be able to make use of the data that is associated with that activity. So that's where that comes from.
Okay, great. Okay, so we've got about sort of 25 minutes. If people have more questions, or if you've got if anyone's got other projects that they've not spoken about yet, so that could be any of us, it doesn't have to be the people who originally spoke, or if you've got project ideas that you want to sort of bounce for the people and get advice on. I don't know if anyone's got anything they want to.
I think in a group like ours, one thing that's very important is trying to lobby individual councillors. We did a lot mostly with city and county councils and other local authorities. So as well as having good relations with the officers and trying to develop that contact, you need to identify any councillors who show particular interest in cycling and work with them.
Yeah.
Because most councillors aren't very interested, and often most of the views expressed about cycling tend to be negative ones. So you need to seek out those who are more responsive, positive ones, and work with them.
Yeah.
And again, that takes a lot of effort, especially when you're dealing with lots of different authorities, about 4 or 5 altogether. And of course, things change come election time, so you need to be lobbying the candidates and making contact again with those who are elected. But that's all important to raising your profile in the long term and getting your ideas across.
Yeah. Great.
Has anybody heard of the alternative to Boris bikes that's been talked about in the press a bit recently?
The OFO bikes in Sheffield.
Yes. We're going to have a new bike scheme in Nottingham. So we've had these city car bikes for about 5 or 6 years, but they've run into financial problems. So they're now negotiating with one of the new docklist providers to bring in a new scheme, which it should have happened at Easter, but hopefully will now happen later in the year. But I think that's very important for people that just want to pick up a bike for a casual trip and try it out, because people don't always plan their individual cycling trips, and just spontaneously they feel like doing it, the weather's fine or something. So you want to make it easier for them to get a bike and to return it. And I think evidence from elsewhere shows that that can be a very good way of getting more people on bikes who might then consider getting their own bikes if they've tried a public bike share scheme bike and that works okay.
The one I'd heard about, you don't actually have to take it to a bike park. You just leave it wherever, literally outside your house.
Yeah.
And then it's got a little sat nav thing that tells the person who owns it and runs it where it is. So or you just leave it there and then someone else picks it up. And
it's the kind of thing that technology makes it much easier, because technology can keep track of the bikes.
Yeah.
And, including for use out of area, because sometimes there are problems people leave them anywhere outside the area, and then you get masses of bikes left like these sort of piles and piles you get in countries like China. But I think most local authorities in this country who tried these schemes are trying to regulate them more carefully so they don't get these problems of bikes just being left anywhere.
I think Uber was trying to buy one of those cycle schemes as well.
Yeah.
I think that I read a tiny article today, and by tiny I mean about 3 lines long, saying Uber's looking at buying a cycle hire scheme. But it was that sort of basis where people rent it and leave it where they want. But I think there was what had happened with previous schemes was the maintenance was difficult to keep up with them because they were just getting left. There was no set place of finding what they were like or what they needed, whether they had sort of repairs to be done. So they were just sort of getting used while it's been damaged.
Yeah, there are a lot of them in London. There's been a huge explosion in the number of the dockless bikes. I mean, sadly, a lot of them seem to have been sort of dumped rather unceremoniously. I've seen a few on the banks of the River Thames and other places. But yeah, there's a huge number of them now, and they do seem to be getting used. But I mean, in London, you've got the competition of the Boris bikes already, and people have.
So the Boris bikes generally competing, because even though you have to dock them, because they're kept in good condition, I guess it's easier to do that.
Yeah, I think that's certainly part of it, and also just the reliability. You know where the docking stations are. You can look up to see how many there are there, and it's something you can rely on if you're a regular commuter. If you're just sort of working on the off chance that there will be one in your area, then that's, it doesn't give you the sort of confidence to use it every day.
I think some public bike share schemes are now bringing in e-bikes as well. And again, that's very useful for people who want to try out an e-bike and then with a view perhaps to buying one themselves later.
I was just about to say,
it helps to have a range of bikes.
Yeah. John, this is on a different tack, but you talked about that you're collecting air pollution data in Belper. What are you planning to do with that now you have it?
Well, we have a local online newspaper, and we publish in that, and it's our Belper Goes Green festival soon, which is one of the main places that we try to get across to people, because we've got hundreds of people going to that. One of the main places we try to get across to people the merits of what it is we found. Now, it's quite surprising. There there are places in Derbyshire that exceed the legal limit for air pollution, and Belper comes surprisingly close because there are busy streets with houses either side, which trap the pollution in. So we've discussed that with Amber Valley Borough Council, who are responsible for air pollution, and they suggested, that people would be more likely to receive and act on that information if we suggested some way in which they may be able to avoid the air pollution themselves, take personal action to avoid it. And of course, there is an obvious way to avoid it, which is to walk to school rather than taking the kids, and to cycle if it's safe to school. But basically, to stay away from the main roads where the cars are, and to use the back alleys, because the pollution is very narrowly funneled around the roads and dissipates very quickly if you use other routes to work. So basically, the message we're trying to get across is, if you're in a car, you might feel as though you're in a nice enclosed space, but actually all that pollution is being pumped into it. You're breathing it all in, and the only way to avoid it is to use the other routes. And incidentally, if you do that, you'll also limit the pollution, you'll reduce the pollution that other members of your community are experiencing. So that's how we're trying to use it, mainly.
Right. So it might be Belper Go Screen is in a few weeks, isn't it?
Yes, it's spring back. It's a weekend after spring back holiday. Yeah. Right.
On that one thing, in a previous life, I used to work for the Greater London Authority, and we did a lot of work on safe and clean air walking routes to schools and things like that. And there is a big thing in London about trying to find routes, particularly people walking to school, that avoid some of the most congested and polluted roads. And it's something they've done with sort of citizen science people who've obviously taken readings and worked out where the safest places to walk are. I don't know if that's something that's been done elsewhere as well, but it's certainly a London thing.
Yeah, well, I think the sounds really isn't that complicated. Within a few metres of the road, the pollution tends to be high. It's exhaust pipes that are pumping it out, and we've taken measurements, not that far away from a main road, and the levels of pollution come down pretty rapidly, to be honest.
I think potentially the air quality debate is one of great value in promoting walking and cycling, but we do also have to be aware that there are some politicians, like the one in Nottinghamshire, who take an opposite view. It's a reason not to promote walking and cycling, on the grounds that if that means you want to have more of your road used for cycle lanes or cycle paths, that's going to increase congestion, especially at junctions, and that will make congestion worse. So, if you're a politician in a way is not disposed to having things like cycle lanes, cycle paths, or even bus lanes, then you certainly don't want anybody trying to tell you you've got to introduce those now for the sake of improving air quality. So we need to be prepared sometime to counter that kind of argument, which we certainly had locally, and I believe it's been quite common with some politicians in London as well, despite the fact that London has, I think, the worst air quality from traffic of any place in this country.
Yeah. Well, as I say, our aim is personal action rather primarily local government action. And what we're trying to do is say, you personally can cut your air pollution tomorrow in the way you get your kids to school, simply by walking down a back road instead of driving them in the main road in a car. You can do it tomorrow. Halve it. Not really a problem.
How have you countered that argument when you've come across it? What's Pedal's tack been?
Well, I think the most important thing to get across is to take a long-term view that once you achieve a critical mass of more people on bikes, then there'll be less demand for people using cars, and that would improve pollution levels, bring them down, even if the short term might aggravate it. And that's the thing to get across. And certainly, Nottingham is now one of the 8 worst urban areas in the country for air pollution from traffic. And so we're trying to use that argument, and it's certainly one of the arguments we've used in support of this new foot cycle bridge we're campaigning for on the east side of Nottingham, because currently the alternative is to use Trent Bridge and Lady Bay Bridge, which are very scary for cyclists and indeed walkers, and also have some of the worst pollution of anywhere in Greater Nottingham.
Yeah.
Chesterfield has an air quality management area declared, But unfortunately, that's being used to promote a new road, which will run along the canal corridor, thus destroying the rather peaceful cycleway along there, which is a bit of a shame, really. But
is it just moving the air pollution to a different road?
yeah, of course it will, because all it will mean is that where the constriction is at the moment will move to somewhere else where the next junction is. So personally, and cycle campaign wise, we're quite against it. But unfortunately, there's both Derbyshire County Council and Chesterfield Borough Council are very much for it.
Yeah.
So I'm sure.
It's ironic in the case of Nottingham that one of the worst hotspots for bad air pollution is right outside one of our largest hospitals, the Queen's Medical Centre, that indeed featured in the recent hospital series on BBC television. And that is right on the ring road, close to Nottingham University. And air pollution is very bad there, often stagnant traffic and so on. So that's a particular challenge for that public health purpose. And I think many people who work and health professionals who work at the hospital are very much aware of that. But that's one of the major challenges in reducing air pollution problems in Nottingham, that hotspot. That and the two main road bridges over the Trent.
Could I ask if any of you have come across the Mini Holland programme in the London boroughs of Enfield and Kingston and Waltham Forest?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the one in Walthamstow especially, and that I believe has been very successful because so happens our daughter lives there, as has been done there quite a lot. And I know there was a lot of opposition from local traders when it came in about 2 years ago, because a lot of it involved closing rat runs commonly used by drivers. But now you've got much more pleasant streets for walking and cycling and just gaps left in road closures for people to cycle through. And the opposition seems to have died down, but certainly it was very strong when the proposal first came up.
Yes, I certainly heard that the opposition in Kingston had been strong, but it had been pushed through by the local authority anyway, and has been very successful since then. So there's probably quite a lot to learn from programs like that, isn't there?
I think there is, and one of the lessons to be learned is the importance of strong political commitment. When you get opposition from various local groups, especially traders, you've got to have politicians making a consistent argument in support of it on health grounds and air pollution grounds, etc. And then realising that the fuss is likely to die down after a few months. Perhaps you might need to make a few concessions, but keeping to the basic scheme is very important.
Yeah.
And it helps the fact that I think in London there's strong political commitment to cycling by Transport for London and by many borough councils as well, and that helps where you get political change every few years, and you get new politicians coming in who don't much care about air quality or sustainable transport. Then any good work is rapidly undone, and the politicians are much more likely to succumb to that kind of political pressure.
Yeah, that's definitely true. TfL has led a lot of that, going Dutch work and everything else. And you have had opposition from the boroughs and from within the boroughs, but the position of the GLA and the mayor is such that they can, within reason, they can get their way. I mean, the one interesting thing that I've become aware of through work that I've been doing the last year is that you've now got these new subnational transport bodies being established across the country. So there's Transport for the North, there's a Transport for the South East, there's one called England's Economic Heartland in Beds, Bucks and Herts, and they are effectively being based on Transport for London and are sort of being set up as mini TfLs to deal with sustainable transport and other issues in their areas. And it may well be something that you guys will find quite useful in terms of engaging with them, because they'll sorry, Karen.
I know Transport for London has done lots of good work for cyclists, but I think that isn't always the case with some of the other bodies. I mean, in the Midlands, we have Midlands Connect set up a few years ago. And first of all, a lot of people in the East Midlands feel it's dominated by West Midlands. But secondly, its main interest seems to be new road and rail links connecting with HS2 and things like that, and very little interest in daily sustainable transport like walking and cycling or indeed local bus services.
Yeah, and that's the challenge. That's something that we've certainly found. I mean, CPRE, we did a consultation response to the recent TFN sustainable transport strategy, and certainly to a large extent, some of these organisations are putting economic growth ahead of transport planning and sensible transport planning in terms of how they operate. The one thing I would say though is that I worked at the GLA for about 6 years, and my experience of newly devolved organisations like that was that you had they learned because they were new and they were trying to work out what they were created to do. And I think if you want to try and shape what an institution does, sometimes it's best to do that in its formative years, and that I think is, even though
I think that's beginning to happen locally. I mean, it's hard for Midlands Connect, because I say it tends to be West Midlands dominated, so those of us on the East Midlands can't influence it, but we are having some success with our local economic partnership, D2N2, which covers Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire, and they're increasingly showing interest in sustainable transport, partly with advice from Matt Easter, who's our regional director of Sustrans, and they have taken the lead recently in putting forward a joint bid on behalf of the 4 authorities, city and county, in the D2N2 area for DFT, for funding for consultancy support for these new local walking and cycling infrastructure plans that are coming in, and that's quite encouraging, as well as helping to finance directly some of the better schemes that have gone in, including one I can name in Nottingham.
I know that also, this isn't something we've really talked about tonight, but D2N2 also have quite a lot of money to promote electric vehicles at the minute as well. That's another area there. Yeah.
I think when they came in, they were mainly concerned with road when it came to transport, as well as sort of skills and training. But they have certainly in the last few years shown a bit more interest in sustainable transport, and they are key players now for anything you want finance for locally, with on a major scale for walking and cycling.
There has been a bit of an issue, I think, with accountability with some of them, and certainly CPRE's branches have found that to be a bit of a concern. But because they are, like I say, because they're new organisations, there is a bit of a sense that if you make enough of a nuisance of yourself, you can begin to get some doors open. So I know a number of our branches have been speaking to their local subnational transport bodies and saying, look, can we see the minutes of your meetings? Can we turn up to your meetings and watch, even if we don't participate? Contacting the councillors who are running these organisations and trying to say, look, there's got to be an element of accountability here. There may well be avenues there.
It's often very hard for us as local campaign groups to influence them directly, but I think you're right. You have to work through the councils. If you can get the councils to support what you have in mind, then in turn they may bring pressure to get support from D2N2, and all that, again, like I said earlier, takes a long time, but it's all part of the effort for funding for particularly major projects.
Okay. It's 10 to 9. Does anyone else have anything that they're really burning to say before we start to draw to a close?
I think there's only one thing I would say is that in terms of looking for funding and looking for support from other bodies, I think it's obviously very important, but it's something that I've given up on because it requires such a lot of time and commitment to do that. It feels that if you had spent that time just getting on with making something that is sustainable, and we talked about sustainable transport, that sustainability it's not just environmental sustainability, but it also has to be socially and economically sustainable. So we are committed to trying to do something that is economically sustainable. And if what we can do is to develop a business case which is sufficiently good, then it will work in a way that doesn't need to be funded. And if we were to do something, on the other hand, that required funding, it's likely that it would require funding forevermore. So I think it's important. It might be difficult to describe how your particular form of sustainable transport has a revenue stream, but it's important to think along those lines in order to make it economically viable, or tie it to another form that that benefits from that. So I think there's an important.
That's where I think you can make a strong case in terms of the economic benefits of more cycling, from better air quality and improved health and reduced absenteeism. That means more productive labour force, so very strong economic benefits. Those are the kind of things. But I agree, you've got to make a case on economic grounds, and if you want to get support from the LEPs like D2N2, those kind of economic benefits are vital rather than just showing benefits for leisure and recreation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that we're a mixture, aren't we? Because the focus is community-led transport. Some of us are volunteer kind of groups, and others are working on employed sort of projects with employed people. Yeah, so how much you can do as volunteers before it becomes something that needs staff. Yeah. Okay. Great. So I hope that's been really useful for everyone. It's like a one-off webinar, if you like. MEA doesn't have anything else planned around sustainable transport at the moment. But just a few thoughts around if you're wanting to continue the conversation or work together more. Tomorrow morning I'll email you all and ask if you're happy for me to share your email with the rest of you. So you will need to sort of just positively reply to me a quick yes. So I'll give it about a week so you've all got time to do that. And I've put in the little chat, I hope everyone can see the little chat bit on the right hand side, the website that I mentioned that I run, so everybody's-talking.org. And once you're on that, you can click to sign up to our monthly newsletter, and that doesn't just cover transport, it covers lots of different areas, things around energy and food and other areas, but that we do it kind of including that stuff around transport because it's something that people are interested in. And you can also always forward me things to include in that newsletter if you've got any events or projects running that you want to promote. Also, Zoom is a sort of paid for service, the webinar service that we're using now, and Transition Towns nationally has an account that local groups can make use of. So I know some of you are involved in transition initiatives, but also they're quite flexible about it. So if you're involved in another initiative but want to ever make use of it to have this sort of conversation, it's obviously sometimes easier than everyone physically coming together across the two counties. So if you're interested in that, let me know and I can put you in touch with the right person at Transition Towns. Okay. And I think that's everything. Yeah, unless anyone's got anything else they wanted to add. Yeah, but thank you very much to the 4 speakers for preparing your presentations.
Thanks very much for organising it. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah. And we've got one lady who had to drop out earlier today, and a couple who haven't shown. So we've got a couple of other people to share it with, and it will go on our website and be shared through our newsletter as well. Great.
Great. Thanks for organising.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks then.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.